What's up, everyone, and welcome in to Your Celtics Source, episode 47 here. And I'm recording this as the Boston Celtics are playing the Utah Jazz, so we're not going to talk as much about this game. Maybe we will towards the end of the game. But I want to start with talking about the game against the Portland Trailblazers on Sunday night, where Jaylen Brown ties the franchise record with Larry Bird for consecutive games with 30 points. We're going to talk about how the Celtics lost that game as well, and maybe we'll start with that. Before we do that, please like and subscribe, follow on social media. You can check out this podcast and all podcasts on your favorite podcasting app, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We do a podcast episode after every third Celtics game, and I try to, when I have time, to do a game reaction for each Celtics game as well, sometimes live. Lately, over the vacation, I have been traveling and I haven't been able to do a full episode or a full reaction after every Celtics game, but we are going to do a reaction here to the game specifically against the Portland Trailblazers as a podcast episode. And I think the best way to start with is just what happened on Saturday night, where the Celtics, coming in with a 4-game winning streak, flying high. Yes, they had a couple of losses throughout the month of December, but mostly it was a fantastic month for the Celtics. They had the third best record with, I believe they were 10-3, something like that, 8-3 maybe. And their record gets snapped with a 114-108 loss. Really a disappointing loss. Yes, the Trailblazers have been up and down, and unfortunately, after all the hype around Robert Williams playing, he ends up not playing. But that being said, you're playing a shorthanded team because of that. And why did the Celtics lose? I think it was the turnovers. That's a big one, right? You have 20 turnovers, nearly double their season average. When you have 20 turnovers in a game, you're basically, losing the game yourself. You're giving the game away. You can't be giving up 20 turnovers and think you're going to win any NBA game, let alone against a team that, has talent, right? There are definitely teams, almost all teams in the NBA can beat you if you are basically just forfeiting the game yourself by the way you play. Right? There's no team in the NBA that can't beat another team on any given night. There's just so much talent going around. And it doesn't help when you just basically, give the other team free points play after play. They were out-rebounded, outworked as well on the offensive glass. Usually the Celtics are the one they're working to out-rebound teams, to out-hustle teams, because they don't have that size. They don't have that athleticism maybe in the center position, and so you see them working for all these rebounds. You rarely see another team basically outwork the Celtics, because really the Celtics have only won games when they're outworking their opponents, right? And I think that's really what was, the strangest thing about the game, was the fact that another team was able to out-hustle you, something that almost rarely happens. I think, Portland did catch fire from three. They made 18 threes in the game. That didn't help as well. The Celtics struggled mightily shooting the ball, right? Add that with the turnovers and the rebounds, and yeah, there was no way they were going to win this game. You would think, coming into a game like that, and yet it was a close game, right? And that's partly because of Jaylen Brown. And we're going to get to Jaylen Brown in just a second. I do quickly want to mention the defensive issues that they had on the night, where, I think they spent way too much time trying to defend the paint against guys like Advia and other players on the Trailblazers, and that left just the 3-point line wide open, especially in the corners, right? And when a team gets hot like that, which any team in the NBA can, if you're the way you're scheming it, if you're not doing anything to try and slow those down, games are just gonna turn on head like that, like it did on Sunday night. Right? I think the Celtics sort of went in sort of that fourth quarter hoping that the Trailblazers would cool off. Right? They would go into a little bit of slump and the Celtics could hold on to the small lead that they had. And they really didn't. Right? They just stayed hot, which we see this often with the Celtics. It feels like, the Celtics, when they're shooting threes, it's contagious. They either are all making them or they're all missing it, and you get big blowouts, or you get games like this where it feels like the other team is making all of them, and the Celtics can't find a way to knock it down. And I know that's not exactly how it goes, but it just feels like whenever the Celtics are shooting poorly, which they weren't terrible in this game, but whenever you have any little bit of slump, it seems like the other team just catches fire at the same time. And that obviously is a biased view, which anybody on any team would have, thinking that, your team gets cold and the other team gets hot at the exact same time, which, usually doesn't happen. But there is sometimes a bit of overlap. And obviously, most of the time, Celtics not even getting shots off with the amount of turnovers that they had. But I think the story of the night, it's one game. I think the story of the night is Jaylen Brown's performance. And yes, once again, it's just another night for Jaylen Brown as well. But it speaks to the bigger picture of how he's just carrying this team this year. And how without him, you don't have a chance in any of these games. And yes, they're 2-0 without him this season. But you have to look at the opponents they're playing and, really question whether those are actually quality wins. I think one of them was against the Washington Wizards just before that Lakers game on Thursday night. I forget the other one. It was more recent than that. Maybe it was against the Heat, maybe? That's when he did it. Anyway, I think it's whatever, it's 8 games or 9 games with 30 points for Jaylen Brown. And I think it's 12 of the last 13 or something like that. And that 13 game that sort of split up the two streaks here was the game where he had 19 points and a triple-double. Right? So he's just been on fire throughout the last 2 months. And in this game, he has 37 points. He ties Larry Bird, as I said at the top of the show, for consecutive 30-point games in Celtics history. Obviously, that's not NBA history, but still elite company that he's in. I'm not sure there's that many more people that have had, more games like that. Obviously, guys like Wilt have definitely had games like that. In December, he's averaging 33 points per game with pretty good efficiency. And like I said, he's just carrying this team offensively. And as I'm recording this right now, the Celtics have just pulled away from the Utah Jazz with a 127-116 point difference right here with a minute 25 left in the fourth. It was pretty close, but now the Celtics seem to be pulling away. Jaylen Brown currently has, last time I checked, he was pretty low. He only had around, I believe, 17 points. And right now he definitely has, as I check, Jaylen Brown has 23 points with 59 seconds left. So my guess is the streak is going to come to an end unless something unforeseen happens. But, I'm not saying he's going to have another streak like this season, but he's definitely going to have plenty more 30-point games. He's just been on fire. I mean, I don't know what to say about him this season, because we came into the season thinking that, I guess we didn't really know how he was going to play. Would he be able to carry a team by himself? The last couple of times we've seen him, in big moments carry a team was, first of all, not for a whole season. Second of all, you saw it last year in Game 6 of the playoffs against the Knicks where he sort of fell apart. After he did have a good, Game 5, but that obviously was helped by the 10 blocks from Luke Cornett. And then, earlier, a couple years ago against the Heat in the playoffs, when Tatum went down with that ankle injury and he wasn't up to the task. And this is the first season where we've gotten to see, him just be himself. And he said, that this is his favorite season. Now, who knows, if, it really is his favorite season. I'm not saying he's lying or anyway, but, I'm sure the championship season was pretty good as well, especially when he won MVP. But that being said, right, the freedom that he has without Jayson Tatum is, something that he's not going to get again, assuming Jayson Tatum comes back healthy. And I'm not saying that there needs to be some big trade or something to, maybe move on from Jaylen Brown, but it certainly isn't the same with Jayson Tatum on the floor, right? He definitely, draws the attention, but it's a lot of, my turn, your turn, and Jayson Tatum's obviously going to get more turns with just, the player that he is. And I think Jaylen Brown, he is less of a ball handler. That makes a little bit of a difference. Jayson Tatum can bring the ball up and sort of designate or facilitate a play where Jaylen Brown hasn't done that in the past. Definitely more this year for sure. And that, I think, is part of the difference on why, Jayson Tatum gets more opportunities, because he's the first one that can decide just, I'm going to go score on this play, or I'm going to feed it to Derek White or Drew Holiday or whoever it was. And I'm not saying he chose not to pass it to Brown. Of course he did. But there's just less of that opportunity when he's spreading the ball around to everyone who's open and not just Jaylen Brown taking it for himself. Right? And Jaylen Brown this year, definitely not selfish in any way, but he's realized that, at some points in the game, I just have to go put the ball in the basket. And he's done exactly that. Which it's just fantastic to see from him, that he can, carry a team, but I'm hoping that he can take the things that he's maybe learning this year or realizing about this team and be able to work alongside Jayson Tatum next season, or maybe even later down the season. And the good thing is they're not changing up or they haven't at least changed up their play style without Jayson Tatum. And, right, I know Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, a lot of the guys last year talked about playing fast this season. And that hasn't happened. And why hasn't it happened? Because they're expecting Jayson Tatum to return, and they want to be able to fit right back into his play style, he is more of that slow, methodical player. And, I think that actually will be better for Jayson Tatum's health in the long term. Obviously, Achilles are, I'm not going to say rare in any way, but, unexpected, and it can turn up at any moment, which you don't expect, or what you can't put yourself in harm's risk. And yes, this team, or the NBA at least, is all young and running fast and transition and whatever, but if you can limit turnovers and focus that, teams are going to have less chances to get out in transition and use their speed and athleticism to hurt teams, right? Or, hurt teams, so then you don't have to worry as much about just being out-hustled and outpaced and all of that, right? If you're not giving the team breakaway transition opportunities, then you can play slow. It's only when, you have to be able to get back and defend a turnover that you caused in your backcourt. But I really think what happened to Jaylen Brown in that Portland game, right? He got his 37 points. He was cooking, and Portland started doubling him. And that's what we were worried about coming in this season, right? Would teams just double him and force Jaylen Brown to give it up, and his teammates couldn't capitalize, right? And we saw that earlier, I think, in the season. And then Jaylen Brown found a way to, despite the double team, shoot mid-range shots, which he's always done, but he's gone to a heavy extreme on them this year, which has allowed him to sort of bypass a double team because he just pulls up before the double team comes. Or, they tried to, Jaylen Brown has tried to maybe shoot, threes more on, a sort of catch and shoot basis versus, off the dribble. Right? And those are things that have helped him, bypass the double teams. But then in that, fourth quarter on Portland, those sort of struggles came back to hurt them just a tiny bit. I'm not saying it's something that's we'll keep an eye on it for the rest of the season, but I'm not saying it's anything that we have to worry about or anything. It's just one game, right? Teams drop games all the time. But the Celtics did struggle to create really any concrete offense out of those double teams late in the fourth. And I'm wondering if teams will start to do that more as the season goes on. I just think you just need some more scoring help along Jaylen Brown, which is where Anthony Simons comes into play, right? He's just a born scorer, and he's more of an on-ball scorer, right? So who knows if he can score off the ball. I think that's been a little bit of the struggle with him so far this season, for sure. And obviously the defense is a big problem. You don't want to play him out there if he's going to be hurting you so badly on defense. And I don't think it's been that badly, but that is, a concern with him, and especially because Jaylen Brown's not playing high-level defense right now as he tries to, I think, take on that sort of bigger star role where you don't want to be putting all-out effort every single possession defensively because you're needed so much on the offensive end. And there's been some lapses from him, for sure. It's not been a great defensive season for him. By no means has it been terrible. I mean, he's doing a much better job of rebounding as well, which has, helped this team tremendously in the absence of Jayson Tatum. We're going to move on here. I quickly want to talk about Hugo Gonzalez and a couple little rotation sort of points here, along with Neemias Queta, before we wrap up this episode. But yeah, we'll start with Hugo Gonzalez. I think he was also a bright spot in this game, along with Jaylen Brown. 13 points. He had strong defense throughout the entire game. High energy. He played 30 minutes in this game. I think that's not quite a season high. I think he did have 35 the other day. But he played in crunch time. Something that, Joe Mazzulla has been doing a little bit more with guys like Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, to an extent, and Hugo Gonzalez, right? Trusting these young guys that are just in there for a defensive spark, right? And anything they give you offensively is huge. And this game definitely wasn't a defensive problem in any ways, which we saw, right? The problem was the turnovers and the lack of offensive production, stagnant offense, if you will, which caused, the loss. But that being said, Hugo Gonzalez continues to get confidence in shooting threes and driving to the basket. He had some great dunks over the last couple of games as well. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Hugo Gonzalez. We need a little bit more consistent offense for sure, along with Jordan Walsh. But the defense is always there, and I think with Jayson Tatum, when he comes back, you can play one, probably not more than one, maybe two, alongside him at all times in a bench unit, and they're just going to complement him tremendously because you can do the pick and roll and whatever, and then you can, put a guy like Hugo Gonzalez on the ball defending the other team's best player, and Jayson Tatum can be more of that roaming center, which he's done a great job of being his entire career. Right? He's just 19 years old for one. He looks like that long-term rotation piece that you need, right? Celtics haven't gotten over the last couple of years players that, are on low salary contracts and are late round picks, right? And that's really hard in the NBA. There are not many players that go, second round or undrafted that make it to the NBA just because of how selective it is. So any guys like that, right? Jordan Walsh starting to be that player as well. It's just so great for staying below the apron taxes in this new era of basketball. Neemias Queta, we'll wrap it up with him. He definitely is a legit NBA center. He still has some polishing that he needs to do around the rim, and not necessarily offensively or defensively, just his presence and where he is on the court. Sometimes he gets dragged over a little bit too far by a opposing player on the defensive end, and he fouls maybe when he doesn't need to, when he, or maybe he goes over and tries to contest a shot and leaves an open rebound available for a putback dunk or something like that, right? When his teammate has it pretty well guarded and you just have to live with the shot that guy gets and try not to make it a harder shot, but then give up the offensive rebound, right? And I think he has pretty strong physical rebounds as well, so he can body his way or get good position to get the rebound, right? So just trust your teammates, Derek White, whoever's on the court with him, to make enough of a contest to force the miss, and then you can come in and get the rebound. He's a strong rebounder, as I said, right? He needs, I think a little bit more of a better touch on his short range shooting. Right? He shoots a lot of those sort of one-handed floaters. It'd be nice to see him get like an actual jumper from around 15 feet or so. I think that will help him tremendously. I know he's not a shooter, but that just allows him to have just an even bigger range of offensive production, right? And I think, especially in this game against Portland, as I said, the fouls, right? He was sitting late. When you needed a guy to be a rim protector in this game, you didn't have it. And Luka Garza's been okay as of late when he's come back into the lineup, but you definitely want Queta out there most of the time. And him sitting in this game, in the late fourth quarters, and really in the third quarter when you could be pulling away from this lead or from this team, this inferior opponent, it kept it really close with the with him warming the bench. But I'm gonna wrap it up here. The Celtics game has gone final. The Celtics win 129-119. Jaylen Brown has 23 points, if I am correct. Yes, indeed, he has 23 points. So the streak comes to an end, unfortunately. But that being said, 9 straight games with 30 points for Jaylen Brown. Tied with Larry Bird for the best record on the Celtics. The Celtics improve to, I believe, is that 20-12 on the season? Yes, indeed, 20-12 on the season. I believe they play the Clippers next, if I am not mistaken. No, they play the Kings and then the Clippers. We will be live, or we will have another episode after the Bulls game, the third game, on Monday. So we will probably have this coming out Tuesday morning at some point. You can check that out when it comes out. We will try and do some reactions after these games as well. I cannot guarantee that with my scheduling, as I am still traveling, and I'll be back Monday night as well. But once again, the Celtics win this game against the Utah Jazz 129-112, improved to 20-12 on the season. And until next time, go Celtics.